Seuda Shlishis Chelek Chaf Aleph Beshalach Beis Lili Nishmis Rabbi Yosef Binyamin Ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman, a fascinating exploration into the minig Chabad of not eating bread or hamoitzi at Seuda Shlishis. From the pasuk, in the pasuk of this week's parsha, Vayomer Moshe, Moshe said, "Ichlu hayom, eat it today." This is talking about the Shabbos. After collecting man on a daily basis, on Friday, the man appeared with 2 portions, and Moshe said, tomorrow there's not going to be man. Then it came the day of Shabbos, and they saw that no man had fallen. So they were afraid. Moshe said, today is Shabbos. Today no man is going to fall. But then they came in the afternoon, and they saw that there was still no man. They were afraid that maybe there's going to be no more man. So Moshe said like this, he said, Ichlu hayom, eat it today. Ki Shabbos hayom la Hashem, today is Shabbos. Hayom lo yisimtzu basada. Today you're not going to find man in the field, but tomorrow the man will resume. Now, in this pasuk, v'oshteit drei mal dem vort hayom b'negei achilas hamon b'Shabbos. This pasuk has the word hayom, today, 3 times with regards to eating man. Learning of Chazal, Dimchiyu, from Achilas, Shalos, Sudas, B'Shabbos. From this Chazal, learn that there is an obligation to eat 3 meals on Shabbos. In the Horror, the Rebbe points out that the Alter Rebbe sees this as a remez, as a hint, not as a limud. But either way, there's the fact that it says 3 times the word hayom is an indication to us that there is an obligation to eat 3 meals on Shabbos. And even though generally in halacha, when we say a su'uda, a meal, we mean to wash and make hamoitzi and eat bread. Nevertheless, with regards to the 3rd meal of Shabbos, we find in Shulchan Aruch a machlekes, a dispute amongst the various different codifiers. There is the opinion of the Rambam that even at the 3rd meal there has to be bread, challah, hamoitzi. Und yesh makilin sheyochel lekayim Seuda gimel b'chol meichel la'asui mechameshes aminim shemevarchin alav beirim in mezainis unikra mazen. There is another opinion, a more lenient opinion, which is that of the opinion of the Rosh and others, that you could fulfill this meal with mezainis, with anything that is made from grain, as we say the bracha mezainis, which means food, sustaining food. Therefore, it's called mazain. And as long as it's something that is satiating, it suffices to be called a meal. V'yesh makilin oid. There is an even more lenient opinion, which is the opinion of Teisvis. That even if it's not mezainis, something that is eaten normally with bread, like meat or fish, is also good enough because it's usually eaten with bread. It's considered a su'uda. Yes, makilin oid, and there is even a more lenient opinion, that of Rabbeinu Yoina and the Ran, that even with eating fruit, which is not satiating food, it's just tasting something, that too suffices to fulfill the obligation of Seuda Shlishis of the 3rd meal. So you have an opinion that you have to eat bread, you have an opinion that you have to eat grain, you have an opinion that you have to eat something of meat or fish, and you have an opinion that you could even eat just fruit. Und der Alter Rebbe b'Shulchan Aruch, how does the Alter Rebbe paskin? In Shulchan Aruch is Messiah, and the Alter Rebbe, after mentioning all of these opinions, he concludes, Ve'ein lismech klal al kol zeh, you should not rely on any of these lenient opinions. You should eat bread, Elohim Kain Iyavsha Klal Binyan Achar, unless it's impossible. For example, in a case where he's very full, very satiated, he can't really eat bread without causing pain to himself. That, of course, is not required. But other than that, if it's not a case where it's impossible, a person, says the Alter Rebbe, should be washing and eating bread, eating hamoitzi for Seuda Shlishis. So you're going to wonder, Afal Pikain, is Yodua der Minik von Abesenu. Despite the fact that the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch paskins, he rules that one should eat bread at Seuda Shlishis, It is well known, the custom, the tradition of our Rebbes, as if legin beruba deruba beyoser nit essen pas Seuda Shlishis, that in most cases they would not eat bread at the third meal. Sif legin yoytze zayin di Seuda mitatima kolshi. They would fulfill the obligation of the third meal with just tasting something, whatever it might be, not even necessarily mizoinus. So the question is, why? How? If the Alter Rebbe passes in Shulchan Aruch that you should eat bread, how does the minig change? The Tamadavar is, and this is the explanation, this is the meaning of it. The explanation for it. Hayos die dritte Seuda wird angelernt von dem dritten Mal Hayoim. Versteht den Pasuk. We're learning the three meals from the three times Hayoim. So the third meal is being learned from the third time it says Hayoim. The context of that third Hayoim is saying that there will not be mon on this day. The negative of the mon is the Riber Masim as in der Seuda Shlishis soll sein Nikir durch nit essen kin pas bedugme zu leisim zu von man lechem. So therefore it makes sense that the way we observe this third meal is just like there was no mon that fell on Shabbos, so too we don't eat bread at this meal. This is brought in the Levush. So it has a makir in Nigla. In Nigla the Torah, he brings a makir, a source, a reason for why we don't eat bread, because of the fact that this hayoim is said with the word loy. There has to be a negative element to it, so we don't eat bread. The asbara apnimi so derfun v'mavur in Chassidus, and to explain this on a deeper level from the perspective of Chassidus, the dritte Seuda von Shabbos is kineged dem Shabbos de la'asad lavai. The third Shabbos meal corresponds to the Shabbos of la'asad lavai. The Yeshteit Eichin Bach, as we know, when Mashiach comes, it's called Yom Shekulei Shabbos. The Bach says that the three meals on Shabbos correspond to three important Shabboses. The first Shabbos meal corresponds to the first Shabbos, Shabbos Bereshis. As he says, that Chazal tell us, B'pnei man nivra Adam Erev Shabbos. Why was the human being created on Erev Shabbos afternoon? So that way, as soon so immediately he should be able to have everything ready for him when Shabbos arrives, and he can have a Seuda on Shabbos. So Shabbos Bereshis, the first Shabbos, Adam and Rishon, and Adam and Chava have a Shabbos meal. So our Friday night meal corresponds to the Seuda of Shabbos Bereshis. The second Seuda represents the Shabbos of Matan Torah, which Matan Torah is called food, l'chu lachmei belachmi, ushesu yayin masachti. A meal has bread and wine, which refers to Torah. So the second Shabbos meal corresponds to the Shabbos of Matan Torah. And the third Shabbos meal corresponds to the Shabbos of L'asad Lavai, when it is said that there will be a Seuda of the Livyason and the Sheirah Bar, etc., etc. So the Bach brings that, as we know from Chassidus as well, that the three Shabbos meals represent three special times, and the third Shabbos meal, it corresponds to L'asad Lavai. What defines Eilam Haba? One of the things that it's not a place of eating and drinking. Und die Amshacha is demelt von Beginnis Ayin, and the elokus, the godly energy that comes down in that time, the time of the third meal, is coming from the level of ayin, of beyond. Ayin literally means nothingness, where the gashmi is the physical world, the physicality doesn't exist, and it's drawn from above and beyond. V'yeshteit in Bechaya, as Rabbeinu Bechaya brings very beautiful explanation of this pasuk. He says the first Shabbos meal represents a shamoir, Zachar and shamoir, and it corresponds to Malchus, which is why there's a lashon ichluhu, because ichluhu is milashon kala, the Shabbos kala, which is Malchus. The second meal represents Yesoid, the level of Yesoid, which is why it says Shabbos Hayoim. Hayoim, the day, represents Zocher. So Shabbos Hayoim is Zocher, which is the Zoh, which is Yesoid. And the third meal, it says Hayoim Loi, because it's the highest level, the level of Ayin. This is what it says in the Rabbeinu Bechaya. So therefore, now that we understand that Shabbos, this third meal represents Elam Haba, which is an era of no food or drink, and it's a time of Ayin, which supersedes physicality and food. The Riber is Echti Suda Nitkin Suda Regila, which is why the meal that we have at the third meal is not a regular meal. And we emphasize the loy, the not. Me'ez nit came past, we don't need bread. We fulfill our obligation with just tasting something. So this is the explanation, Al Pi Nigla, Al Pi Chassidus, that why we don't need bread, because since it's a level of Hayoim Loy, it says loy, and al pi chassidus, this refers to the fact that this is a time of Elam Haba, this is a time of Ayin, this is a time that we are beyond eating and drinking. Therefore, we represent this by not eating bread. Sifpei says the Rebbe is going to ask, how do you reconcile? In Nigla the Torah, in Halacha of Torah, it seems that the Hidur mitzvah, the best way to do Shelek Seudas is to eat bread, and in Pnimiyus Torah, it seems to imply that the Hidur is to not eat. And it's one Torah. How can we reconcile these two approaches? It's one Torah, one unified Torah. And the inner parts of Torah, the deeper parts of Torah, including the customs based on the deeper parts of Torah, as well as the parts of halacha of Torah, is all part of the same Torah. All parts of Torah have to coincide, have to fit one with the other, and follow the same path. Is verstandig as minig Gedei Yisrael ve'ha'holchim be'ikveiseyim lechatchila al pipnimi yisateidah. So it's understood that the tradition of the great Yidden and those that follow in their footsteps is lechatchila, according to Pnimi Yisateidah, is nitakulu and the yavid al pi halacha mitzidam chas v'shalom. It can be that they're being lenient or doing something in a not lechatchila way, not in the best possible way on their end. If a tzaddik, if a rebbe is not eating a Seuda Shlishis because in Pnimi Yisateidah it says that it's a time of ayin, it can't be that this is a leniency in halacha. Daarvan verstehen, hey, nemes hat leiten has Pnimi Yisateidah mit Seuda Shlishis hecher von achile. Und das ist nicht das Tam auf nicht zu essen pass. It's true that according to the deeper meaning, the deeper understanding, Seuda Shlishis is higher than eating, which is why we don't eat bread. Aber al pi halacha das far takula. According to halacha, it is a leniency to not eat bread. As the Alter Rebbe writes, that you should not rely on this at all. Unless it's in a post facto situation where he's already full and there's no way for him to eat anymore. So how does this fit with the fact that according to Chassidus, the Hidur mitzvah, the most beautiful way of doing this mitzvah is by not eating bread? And now the Rebbe is going to explain al pi halacha why it would be a hidur to not eat bread, even though the Alter Rebbe says, and what the Rebbe is going to say is something that is very similar to what we know about why Chassidim Chassidic Chabad don't sleep in the sukkah, because since after the Mittler Rebbe revealed the idea of the Makifim Debina, the holy lofty energy, godly energy that exists in the sukkah, and therefore it would be a tsar, a pain for him to sleep in the sukkah, and hamitztair pater min sukkah. Someone who has pain does not have to be in the sukkah. If the sukkah is not causing a person to enjoy himself, then he doesn't have to sleep there. And similar to that, we're going to talk about the third meal, that if it causes a person pain to eat at this time, then it would be part of Oineg Shabbos to dafke not eat. With regards to the mitzvah of eating 3 meals on Shabbos, the idea of eating meals on Shabbos is solely for the purpose of enjoying oneself. The says as the alle drei Seuda Shabbos is der chiyuv nit etzem ha'achila von pas kisha la'atzma, that by all of the 3 meals of Shabbos, the obligation is not to eat bread. Like for example, the Korban Pesach, the eating part was the obligation, wasn't necessarily the enjoyment of it. Or b'chlal by karbonis, we might say maybe by matzah, even though you're supposed to be l'tei oven, you're supposed to enjoy it, but the very eating of it is the mitzvah. And that's why we say al achilas matzah. The mitzvah is to eat matzah. But by Seuda Shabbos, the eating itself is not the mitzvah. No, the inyan ha'onig was in them, the mitzvah is to enjoy the food. Lefiza, if that's the case. As by Allah Seuda Shabbos is there tzivui verbunden mit oinig, und nicht mit der achile k'shala'atzma, that by the meals of Shabbos, it is connected to enjoyment. Is in a fall, wo ein Mensch hat Sar von der Achille. So if there's a case where a person has pain from eating, he's nit nur as if him nit kin chiyuv achila. Not only does he not have an obligation to eat, no nachmer as is dach tzad chiyuv nit zu essen. There's actually an obligation to not eat. Und der Lashon von Alten Rebben, ein tzarech litzayir es atzmei lechel, meint efsher as darf nit und kimat nit. And when the Alter Rebbe says a person doesn't have to cause himself pain to eat, it could be the Alter Rebbe is implying not only that he doesn't have to eat, but that he's not allowed to eat. He's almost not allowed to eat because it's not oinig. Is that because such a type of eating is contrary to the whole concept of eating meals on Shabbos, which is the idea of oinig. As the Alter Rebbe writes with regards to fasting on Shabbos or not eating, as a adam she'achila mazekes loy, a person that eating causes him harm, which then he enjoys the not eating, does not have to eat. It's almost that he's not allowed to eat, so he shouldn't have pain on Shabbos. So there is an idea that if eating causes a person pain, like let's say for example, a person is allergic to certain foods, then l'chaira, a person should not eat these foods on Shabbos because they are causing him pain, and it's opposite of Einik Shabbos. Just like with the Alter Rebbe said about fasting, that a person is allowed to fast on Shabbos if the eating is going to cause him pain. The same thing would be regards to various details of food, certain foods. The Rebbe brings in Ha'ara 19 that the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch that if a person if eating fish for a person, even though there's the Alter Rebbe is speaking there, but there is an inyan to eat fish on Shabbos. But if a person does not like fish at all, or the fish is dangerous for that person, then he doesn't have to eat it. So not only is the Alter Rebbe paskening that achila b'chlal, that the idea of eating, that even though you're not allowed to fast on Shabbos, but if eating is going to cause you harm, you're allowed to not eat. Similarly, certain foods, that if they cause you pain or they're detrimental to your health, you don't have to eat them on Shabbos. If a person has pain from eating bread on Shabbos, his obligation is to not eat bread on Shabbos. And on the contrary, if he will eat bread, he will be doing something that is the opposite of the theme of Shabbos. With the whole point is to create oinek. Now let's apply this to Seuda Shlishis and the Rabbeim who did not eat Seuda Shlishis. The fact that there is an obligation to eat bread is as daf given by Adam is as an inyan von einik. This is only for a person that will actually enjoy eating the bread. But if a person does not have enjoyment from eating bread, because the person knows with complete faith, meaning to say, even if it's a person that's not on the level to truly understand these lofty levels of ayin, but a person knows be'emunah shleima with complete faith, as in their zeit from Seuda Shlishis, and in this time period when we eat the third meal, raiva de raivin, which in Chassidus is called the ratzin of the ritzonis, the highest level of ratzin, the highest level of the divine will, which represents that it's so lofty, is meir de b'china von ayoim loy. At this time, what shines upon us is the level of ayoim loy, the beyond, b'chinas ayin, the level of nothingness. Nothingness meaning it is so high that we can't grasp it or define it. This time is compared to Yom Kippur. In Kippur we fast and we don't eat because it's such a high, lofty time. This is similar to Olam Haba, like we said earlier, which is not a time of eating or drinking. Therefore, if a person truly believes this, that this is a time that is beyond food, beyond Gashmias, it would cause him pain to eat bread at this time. Therefore, he does not have the obligation to begin with to eat bread, because the halacha tells us that if a person has tsar, there's a part of Shabbos is to not do something that's the opposite of oinig. It is the most beautiful way halachically to do this mitzvah. He should not cause himself pain by eating bread. Rather, he should fulfill this mitzvah by just tasting something, but not eating bread, because eating bread is going to go contrary to the spiritual theme of this time of the day, and it would cause him tsar. And according to this, we can explain the minig of the Rabbeim, that they did not eat bread, they fulfilled this meal by eating just tasting something. Because the Rabbeim actually experienced this lofty light that was shining during this time of Seuda Shlishis, and therefore they couldn't eat. Eating would cause them pain. The Chassidim, and the Chassidim, there may be some that don't experience the holiness of this moment, but they are connected to their Rabbeim. They learn their Rebbe's Torah, and they apply that into action, and follow in the footsteps of their Rebbe. And if their Rebbe is not eating, then the Chassidim are not eating. So this, and actually, Ahara 21, the Rebbe says something very interesting, because a lot of people ask, when did it begin? When did it start that the minig of not eating bread by Shalosh Seudas? So in Ahara 21, the Rebbe brings from a Sicha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Sukkos Tov Reish Peites, that it happened after the second time the Alter Rebbe was arrested and went to Peterburg. We all know of the first and main time, which ended Yutes Kislev. That year was Tov Reish Nun Tes, which would be 1799 or 1798. 2 years later, Tov Kuf Samach Aleph, again, the Alter Rebbe was taken to Peterburg and arrested. And he came out of jail on Chav Zayin Kislev, the third day of Chanukah, Tov Kuf Samach Aleph. So after that, he said a maimer in which he spoke about, the Alter Rebbe said a maimer in which he spoke about this idea of Hayoim Loi. And after that, in Beis Harav, in the house of the Alter Rebbe, they stopped eating Seuda Shlishis. So the Rebbe explains that based on the fact that the Rebbe Rashab says that when the Alter Rebbe went to Peterburg, especially the second time, the teachings of Chassidus began to come from the Pnimius, come from a deeper place and affect more deeply. Therefore, when the Alter Rebbe said this maimer, the concept of Hayoim Loi, it actually had a physical effect on the Alter Rebbe, that he felt pain from eating during this time, and he stopped eating, and therefore that's when this minig began. So just an interesting historical aspect, that this already began in the era of the Alter Rebbe, around the year Tov Kuf Samach Aleph, which would be 1800 or 1801. In Sif Hey, the Rebbe is going to ask, if that's the case, if this is a time of ayin, time that is beyond food, beyond physicality, and therefore we're not eating bread because it causes us so much pain, why are we eating anything? Why is there a te'ima? That's going to be the question. We have to understand is meyer the beginning of Hayom Loi. Since in this time what's shining upon us is the level of Hayom Loi, as we explained at length earlier. This is a time that is beyond the physical world, beyond enjoying Gashmiyas. There should have no meal at all. Just like Yom Kippur, there's no food because we're beyond eating. This time too should be a time where there's no food at all. We find that Rashbi, he replaced the meal, this third meal of Shabbos out of Pesach that's on Shabbos is a very complicated time. You certainly can't eat bread because it's after noon, which is when chametz is also already, and you can't eat matzah because the matzah at the Seder is supposed to be eaten l'tayav, and it's supposed to be eaten with an appetite, and it's supposed to be excited about it. And if you're going to eat matzah earlier on in the day, then you're not going to feel that same excitement about eating matzah. You're not supposed to eat bichlal too much, so the Seder of Pesach should be eaten l'tayavin. So the Rashbi replaced, instead of having a meal, he spoke divrei Torah, which is an idea of the fact that it's higher than food. It's a time that we're not eating food, and therefore we can replace it with the words of Torah. So we should have done the same thing with Seuda Shlishis. Why, despite everything that we just said, do we still say that there has to be some level of eating, at least of fruit? Now, there are certain mamarim in Chassidus, is mashma, which imply the fact that you have to eat something, unlike Yom Kippur that is totally forbidden to eat. It does not mean it's not because of the uniqueness of the third meal that it's such a lofty time. Nor fakert. Some Amarim imply that this is lower than Olam Haba. It's lower than Yom Kippur, and therefore we don't eat bread, but we have to eat something because we're not totally in a Yom Kippur state or in an Olam Haba state. This is how some Mamarei Chassidus imply. However, in a Rishima from Kedusha's Mervachami Admor, in the notes, in the writings of the Frierdiker Rebbe, B'Shem Aviv Kedusha's Admor Mor Rashab Nishpaseid, in the name of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, is geschrieben as follows. It's written as follows, and it's also printed in Hayom Yom. Ha, the Seuda Shlishis Hayom Loi. The fact that we say with regard to the third meal, that the Pasuk says Hayom Loi, there is something that we don't do because it says the word Loi in the Pasuk, which Hainu Shein Tzarech Pas. This means that we don't eat bread. But you have to eat something. You have to taste something. And the Rebbe Rashab continued the Gemara in Shabbos over there, where it speaks about the three hayoms and it speaks about the three meals on Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi said, may my portion be amongst those who eat three meals. This is what the Rebbe Rashab said, and the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote it down. And then later, the Rebbe printed it in Hayom Yom. In this context where he says you have to eat something, and he brings that together with this, the statement of Rabbi Yossi, may my portion be, implying that he was hoping for this, he was looking forward to this. This implies that the fact that we eat something, we eat fruit, or something at the third meal represents something unique and great about Seuda Shlishis. It's not something lower than Yom Kippur or Olam Haba. It's something that's greater, in a sense, than Olam Haba and Yom Kippur, which is why we're not eating, but we are eating something. So the question is, why? If it's a time of Hayom Loi, if it's a time of Ayin, then why would we eat anything? Now that we've brought up this statement, this teaching of the Rebbe Rashab, we have to understand something else. But the Rebbe brings the Maimer from Rabbi Yossi al Seichachal Dvarav, that the Rebbe Rashab brings this statement of Rabbi Yossi as a proof that you have to eat something. If the Rebbe Rashab was referring to the general overall obligation to eat the third meal, so he should have brought the very obligation from the Gemara, from Shulchan Aruch, where it says the person is obligated to eat three meals. Not, Yehei Chelki, may my portion be, as if it's something different. something special. And if he's not bringing the chiyuv of eating, because here he's referring specifically to the idea of eating something, not bread, because there is something deeper and more special about this time that is expressed in the eating of just a te'ima kolshi, just a taste. Where in Rabbi Yesi do you see this? Rabbi Yesi is saying, may my portion be amongst those who eat 3 meals. He doesn't imply that it's a te'ima kolshu, that it's just a taste. It implies that you're eating a meal. So what is the juxtaposition of Rabbi Yossi's statement with the message that the Rebbe Rashab is trying to bring, that tzarech litim kolshu, that you have to eat something? So in Siv Vav, the Rebbe is going to say, in order to explain this teaching of the Rebbe Rashab and to understand why we do eat something at Seuda Shlishis, we first have to understand a little bit better what is Rabbi Yossi actually saying, Yehei Chelki. So let's explain this by first explaining the statement of Rabbi Yossi, the teaching of Rabbi Yossi. Seemingly not understood. The obligation to eat 3 meals is a very clear din written explicitly in the Gemara. Is was meint da mit wünschen sich Yehei Chelkis? What does it mean, may my portion be? This is something you would say on something that is not an obligation. A person doesn't say Yehei Chelki may manichet tefillin. May my portion be amongst those who put on tefillin. No, putting on tefillin it's not a prayer. It's an obligation. So what does he mean, Yehei Chelki? Then Moshe is mefaris. Moshe asks this question. He says like this: as the Talmud Rabbi Yossi Gezak Yehei Chelki mechlei shalosh seuda is the reason that he says this phraseology. May my portion be amongst those who eat 3 meals. Und azay sein sagen Yehei Chelki bekam andere inyanim was werden dort gebracht in Gemara. And later the Gemara also brings other things about which Rabbi said Yehei Chelki is to encourage the people. That's what the Marsha explains. Rabbi Yossi says, Yehei Chelki, it sounds as if there's something very, very unique about this, and this would encourage other people to eat the 3rd meal. Says the Marsha, that's the meaning of the word Yehei Chelki. The Rebbe has a question on this. Those things that are a hidur mitzvah, that are a cherry on top, that are extra, those things that are mitzvah chassidus, that are an act of piety, but not obligatory according to halacha, is masim to zogin the Yehei Chelki. It makes sense to say, may my portion be to encourage people, because since it's not obligatory according to halacha, so some might say, I'm going to cut a corner here. Says Rabbi Yossi, Yehei Chelki, this is an important thing to do. And he says these words in order to encourage people to do it. But with regards to a total obligation, why do you need to be mizarez asabriyas? Why do you need to encourage the people? And why would Yehei Chelki encourage them? We cannot answer, nor can we answer, says the Rebbe. As Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi was trying to remind the person to have the foresight, as there's only to not become too full on the morning meal, so that way you should have room to be able to eat a 3rd meal. Because it's difficult to say that on such a simple, obvious concept, he has to say Yehei Chelki. Keep in mind, Yehei Chelki is an implication that this is something very unique and special. Everybody knows that if you have to eat another meal later, if you can eat too much now, you won't be able to eat later. So it's pretty obvious that if you have an obligation to eat 3 meals, then you have to make sure that you leave space for the next meal. Rabbi Yossi wouldn't have to say Yehei Chelki on this. So the Rebbe explains this. And the Rebbe is going to explain that there's something special about Seuda Shlishis, that because of that, we dafka have to eat something. Even though we're not eating bread, but something has to be eaten. The fact that it says, with regards to the Olam Haba, the time of Mashiach, that there's no eating or drinking, doesn't mean that the guf will lose its status, its importance. Because there won't be a body, or there won't be a guf. It'll be all about the neshama, or at least guf won't be important at that time. Es meint nor as ba'olam haba that der chibur von guf mit neshama nicht sein durch achilu shasiya gashmis. Ein bei leachilu v'leishasiya doesn't mean there won't be food. Doesn't mean there won't be a guf. It means that the gufs connection with the neshama is not going to be dependent on food. In this world today, if the guf doesn't eat, it's going to die. And if it dies, it becomes mostly disconnected from the neshama. The guf is a corpse. When Mashiach comes, the guf is going to have its own importance and its own existence, and it's not going to need the food to connect it to the neshama. There's man from and Chassidus follows the approach of the Ramban, that the pinnacle, the apex of the era of Olam Haba is after the resurrection. Then as well in Zayin Nishamas begufim, when the Nishamas will be inside the guf. While in the Yiddish and guf mitzad atzmi is damayla miyuchedes, because the guf has its own value. So today the guf is dependent on the Neshama. When Mashiach comes, it'll be revealed that the guf is going to exist and that the guf has its own unique status. And according to this, we can now understand as the this is the advantage. This is the uniqueness in the fact that there is some level of eating at the third meal. Because since this meal corresponds to Lasid Lavei, which also in Lasid Lavei, there will be a body, and the body will receive reward. Time, and so therefore, we want that the body should also in the time of Seuda Shlishis, it should feel some pleasure. Just like when Mashiach comes, the guf is going to receive schar, not just the neshama. So too, at this meal, we want the guf to experience the pleasure of Shabbos. Durch der Teime Kolshi, by tasting something, by eating something, even if it's just a fruit. Zusammen mit der Minion von Ayin, von Loisim Zohu, at the same time, we are on this very lofty level of Ayin, of being beyond food, und der Rest and it came pass. So just like the paradox of the Asad Lavei, when it's not a time that the guf needs the food in order to connect to the neshama, but the guf will also receive schar. The guf will be in existence and it will receive its reward. Similarly, we have a similar paradox in Seuda Shlishis that we don't eat bread because we are in a time of ayin beyond food, but we do eat something so that way the guf should also have an enjoyment, and this highlights the maila, the uniqueness of the guf. The Yisayda Mizu here, the Rebbe adds another detail, which the Rebbe is going to say is a major chiddush. The Yisayda Mizu, more than that, it is explained in the various places as the Seudas Livyasam Sherabar de La'asid Lavei V'Zayin Seuda Gashmius, that the meal that is spoken about, the feast that is spoken about when Mashiach comes, the tzaddikim are going to have this feast, and they're going to partake of the sheirabor, of the livyasan. It says in certain places that this is actually a physical meal, physical food. It's not referring to spiritual, lofty accomplishments, achievements. It's referring to a literal meal. So this same paradox that but at the same time there's a sudas livyasan. Similarly, by Mashiach, by Seuda Shlishis, you have no pas, but you do have the te'ima to represent the Seuda of Livyasan. It says, nevertheless, as the Rebbe, this is a major chiddush. The tzarich iyun v'chipus ayised, we have to look deeper to find a support for this added detail. Even though in the Ari brings that the fact that the Seuda is a Gesuda Gashmis, that is already said in the Bach, but the connection that the Te'ima Kolshehi represents the Seudas Livyasan, this is something that the Rebbe says is a Chiddush Gadol. The Rebbe takes it to a deeper level. Not only is the guf of importance and has to be recognized when Mashiach comes, and therefore it's recognized at the Seuda Shlishis with a te'ima kolshi, with a taste, but there's more than that. The fact that we said that the ultimate schar, the reward, when Mashiach comes, is the neshama in the guf, is not only is it going to be revealed to us the advantage, the uniqueness of the guf, but it's going to be revealed to us that the guf is actually greater than the neshama. The neshama is going to be sustained from the body. The neshama depends on the body. In order for the neshama to experience the fact, to experience and to comprehend the level of atzmus, the neshama needs the guf. The guf, which is in the Olam Hazeh Tachton, the guf, which is the gashmi, comes from atzmus the Eibishter, because whatever is the lower it goes, the higher is the source. Or to use the expression in the Mamarim of Basi Legani that we're learning now, the greatest level, the highest level of the Eibishter comes down into this lowest world. So the guf actually has a higher source than the neshama. The guf is mitziyusei me'atzmusei. And then in order for the neshama to experience this level, the neshama needs the guf to be able to experience this level of atzmus. So then we can apply this as well to the third meal. In the fact that we have to taste something, this highlights the greatness of the guf. When it's madgish mailas a guf, we're emphasizing how important the guf is. Which is even a greater representation of Shabbos Tillasad Lavei. Not only is the guf an equal partner to the neshama, but the guf in a sense is even higher than the neshama, and therefore we want to represent that as well by giving something to the guf, and that is done through a te'ima kol shehi, even though we don't eat pas, because it is a time of ayin and a time of hayon loy. Going back to the statement of Rabbi Yossi, we asked in Sivav, what is the raya from Rabbi Yossi to this statement of the Rebbe Rashab that tzarich litoim, that something has to be eaten. This is the deeper meaning in the words of Rabbi Yossi. May my portion be from those who eat. As well can an essen achila kolshi Seuda Shlishis, that he should be able to eat something at the third meal. Dozo by im zayin an oinig, that he should enjoy it. In them that sich der Herr in die Meile was in das Galle werden erst las love Meile saguf. What was Rabbi Yossi asking, praying for? He wasn't saying Yehei Chelki that I should eat just a third meal. Of course, a third meal is something that is a halacha. Is brought earlier in the Gemara. What Rabbi Yossi was saying, may I be able to enjoy the third meal, and may I be able to highlight the greatness of the guf, which is something that will truly be revealed l'asad lavai, but hopefully I can appreciate some of that in this era as well. And therefore this is the proof that the Rebbe Rashab is bringing. The fact that Rabbi Yossi said, may my portion be amongst those who eat 3 meals. Even though it says, this is a time of not eating. Rabbi Yossi gave us the strength needed to be able to eat something at the third meal, but in a way that it is something that is special and unique, something that we hope for, we pray for, we wish upon ourselves. Not only is it not a deficiency in the hayoim loy, not only are you not going against it by eating, it highlights the greatness of the Shabbos of L'asad Lavei, when the neshama gains, is sustained, is nourished by the body. And this is what Rabbi Yossi was saying. So therefore, we started out by saying that the time of Seuda Shlishis is a time of Hayyim Loi. It's higher than food, which is why we don't eat pas on Shabbos. And halachically, this works because it would cause tsar and would be the opposite of oineg. And according to the Shulchan Aruch, something that causes the opposite of oineg, a person is obligated to not do it. Then we asked, why is there a te'ima kol shehi? And we answered that the te'ima kol shehi, the reason why we have to taste something is because even though when Mashiach comes, there's le'achila v'le'shasiyah, but nevertheless it's going to be revealed to us the maila of the guf. And in order to represent the maila of the guf, when Mashiach comes, already now, me'ein olam haba, we eat something to recognize the pleasure of the guf and the maila, the unique status of the guf. And this is why Rabbi Yossi said, Yehei Chelki. Rabbi Yossi wanted to be able to appreciate, to be able to eat something even in this holy time of Hayyim Loi, and with that he also gave us the strength, the koyach, to be able to accomplish both of these things, to not eat, but at the same time to eat something and recognize the greatness of the guf, even in this time, even in this world.